Hi everyone, welcome to Two Pauls in a Pod show.
Yes.
Yes, we wanted to say this. I'm Paul Kinlan.
I'm Paul Lewis.
Yes.
Hey.
You nearly forgot who you were then
No,
for a
well,
second.
I didn't know if you were going to carry on talking. I thought it'd be better if I just jumped in there, you know.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, so he's Paul Lewis, I'm Paul Kinlan. We're both developer, well, I'm a developer advocate, you're a programming engineer.
I am.
We're working on the Chrome Apps initiative. We're based in London in a really small room. We have an awesome producer, Mark Lunny, who's completely off screen at the moment. But I just thought I'd try and embarrass him live on stage.
Yeah. I like how you said that we're in this little room in London. It makes it sound like that's where we live.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really full time Two Pauls in a Pod. Could be though. That'd be weird.
I wouldn't mind.
Well, yeah. So
yeah, on that note, on that note, let's carry on. So today's episode is about Chrome, the Chrome Apps window and APIs.
Yes.
Chrome Apps is a new platform that we're building into Chrome. It's not yet in stable. It's in Canary and Developer Channel. But we believe it's going to give you the ability to build great web applications in the future. Applications that can do way more than a traditional web application could do. So we can access network, UDP, TCP, all those types of things. But the thing that we want to try and do is tell you how you can build great applications which use multiple windows.
Yes.
I think on the web today we don't really have that many applications that use multiple windows.
No.
Mostly single-page web applications.
I mean, sort of taking a step back, we're used to, pop-up blockers and things because, multiple windows or pop-ups or whatever have been a bit of a nuisance.
Yeah.
So we sort of, because we're on the, in the Chrome Apps environment, we're actually able to kind of reassess that and say, well, actually, multi-windows makes sense for certain applications where you say you've got panels to the side of your main view or whatever. So I guess that's where it kind of comes from.
Yeah,
right?
it's things like Photoshop, right? People expect like a tools palette on the left-hand side, multiple image windows and all that type of stuff. How do you build an application that orchestrates actions between them?
Yes.
I would just like to add before we get into the code, Paul's going to show you some really cool demos and everything like that. One is we have down below, we're trying it, well, Paul's got it completely wrong, but right down below we have...
I have not. It's over there, right?
Yes,
there it is.
There it is.
Hey, I was just pointing at the bottom,
We would like your questions, right? We want to basically answer as many questions as possible during this session, just so we can provide you with the best guidance possible. So if you check our Google link, you'll go straight to our moderator page and you'll be able to vote on questions that you like, down vote some that you don't like. We only have one question so far, so I'm expecting at least 10 today. But yeah, just get asking questions. We also have our colleague in Brazil,
yes,
Renato.
Yes,
Renato, I think is the proper way of pronouncing it. Yes,
I stand corrected.
Anyway, he'll be moderating some of the questions as well as any of the YouTube questions and all those types of things. But please feel free. This is a live show, unless you're watching this tomorrow.
And then in which case, it's not Google Developers Live, it's Google Developers re-recorded.
But we'll answer as many questions as we can today, and if we can't answer them, we'll try and roll them over to the next week's episode.
Yeah. All right. Should we go into some code?
Yes. What editor do you use, by the way?
I use Sublime Text.
Sublime Text.
Every time we get asked that, there we go. That's the one. It's the one I use. You use Vim, do you not?
I'm a Vim man.
You're a Vim improved
I used to
man.
like Vim to the drink. That's how it kind of...
Really? You didn't choose your editor based on the drink that you liked as a child?
No.
No. Good. I'm glad we had that conversation.
I always say that I'm preparing a joke every single episode. This one has been a couple of weeks in the planning.
Yeah.
Right, let's get going.
Sorry
about this. Let's have a look at the code.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So I have the code up on screen. Now, what I've done is I've taken the liberty of actually starting the app ahead of time. So there's a lot of stuff that we've covered in previous weeks about sort of boilerplating, getting up to speed with some code and all the rest of it. So I didn't want to repeat that. You can find those in the samples on GitHub, and you can also watch previous weeks. So I'm in the main.js, which is the background page. This is the hub of your app's activity. And as you can see, I'm actually creating 3 windows. So I'm actually creating 3 of them with index.html as the source, and then I'm just positioning them, across the screen. And they're identical, apart from the fact that I'm pushing on variables. Now, the way to talk to a window, so the window that gets passed back as this in the callback function is an app window, which isn't the same as the DOM window that you're used to dealing with. So we actually access the DOM window inside the app window using the content window property. There you go. That's a fun way of explaining it, wasn't it?
So we can't really do this on the web today, right?
No, not that I know of.
Well, we can do it with iframes, but it's
a bit weird.
Yeah, it's not a generally well accepted way of.
No. So what you can see what I'm doing though is I'm getting the window passed back as the part of the callback. I'm accessing content window, which gets me into the DOM of the window that I created. And then I'm setting this window name property on there, and I'm obviously calling one left, one mid, and one right. And the last thing I'm doing is I'm actually pushing it onto an array of wins, which is basically what I'm going to do, or what I'm going to use later on to actually talk to the window. So let me just show you what this looks like right now. There we are, the windows, they're all the same deal. Left, mid, and right, although you can't really tell that it's left, mid, and right particularly, they just say window. So the first thing that I wanted to actually do is, in the source of index.html, you'll see the markup for what I just showed you, which is this sort of the window, the form, and an output area, and an index.js file. Now what we want to do in this app, if we can, is have a setup where if I type a message in here and say hello and submit it, that it actually does something. That it actually takes that message and puts it into the current window that I'm looking at, but it also shows it up in the other two windows. Kind of, I suppose, like a chat kind of mechanism, I suppose. So the first thing that I want to actually do is I want to pick up the injected variable. Let me just find that over here. So the injected window name, I want to pick that up inside that window, and I want to use it to set the title. So you can see I have in the markup a span inside the h1 called title. And what I want to do in here, as you can see, I've also picked it up in the JavaScript. So what I'm actually going to do is say title.text content equals this, because this was going to refer to the window object, window name. So that's the variable I injected. So now if I reload the application, hopefully, window left, window mid, window right. So this is the first kind of way of dealing with this stuff. You can actually inject variables into your windows. Cool.
I think we talked briefly about this last week, didn't we, with intent data, but we didn't really allude to what was happening.
No.
So last week's talk was about web intents. Whoa, one camera.
We're back.
So it was about web intents and how do you deliver data between windows, and this is the same type of way, isn't it?
Absolutely. Just push that right in. And I think that is a bit unusual for web developers from that typical web development background, is to kind of inject things.
Yeah.
And certainly what I'm going to show you in a little bit is using post message as well, which is a lot more, I think, what people are used to. But you can do it either way, and that's the thing. So it's really down to you as to how you want to do this. So back to the code. The main thing we need to do here is sending messages. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send, when you submit the form on one of those windows, I'm going to take that input and I'm going to pass it to the background page, and then the background page is going to send that message out to all the windows. So the background page, as I said before, is acting as the hub. So everything goes via the background page, and that's the model that I think you need to get used to if you're going to make Chrome apps. So the first thing I need to do, because form submission is not accepted, it's not something that we support in the Chrome apps, I need to say the event, because you can see I've got a form submission event. I'm going to say event.prevent default. So that's going to stop the form from actually being submitted, but it does mean that I capture the fact that they've submitted
I have a quick question.
Form. Go for it.
Are you a tabs guy or a spaces guy?
I'm a spaces guy.
Cool. Good.
But each to their own, it's a personal preference thing, isn't it? Hey, so the thing I want to do is I want to say, let me just do this. If I've got the background page, and I want to call a function on the background page called broadcast, and I'm going to say this dot window name, and then whatever was in the box at the time, and then I'm going to set whatever was in the box to nothing. So there's a couple of things here. Background page is currently set to null, so I don't actually have a reference to the page. Now you could use window.opener is one option, but there's actually something built into the Chrome runtime which we can use. So I'm going to do that instead. We're going to actually do, let me see now, chrome.runtime.get background page. And
should we explain a little bit more about the background page? Or
well, the background page, we've said a couple of times, it's the hub of you.
That shows me listening, doesn't it?
It does rather. Yes.
But does the background page always live there, or can it die at any kind of point in the application?
Well, it can get suspended, but typically it's there all the time.
Yeah, so it's a good little hub,
Yeah.
as you were saying.
It is a good little hub. So because the get background page takes a callback function, I have passed that in there, you can see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use background page equals page. So I'm going to set that given whatever I got returned. So hopefully now, by the time send message is running, we have background page in place. Now the problem is we're calling broadcast and we kind of don't have that function in there. So we better go ahead and add that. Now this is where I'm actually going to use post message to talk to the window. So I've got this message being picked up. I'm sending it to the background page and saying, can you broadcast this to all the other windows? So in main.js, which is my background page, I just throw in a function called broadcast, and I'm going to have it take a message. And then I'm going to go through all the windows that I put onto that array before. Use less than wins length, go through all the windows. I always write my for loops like that. Some people wrote some very, very crazy for loops.
Yeah, so Eric Badelman, he showed me a way that he never uses the length property, but auto assigns the wins to like a win object.
Oh, I like this.
A while ago.
Oof.
Yeah, I'd never seen that before.
No, okay.
Again, each to his own.
Absolutely.
It seemed pretty nice, actually. It was pretty cool.
Oh, I'll have to ask him about that. So, as you remember from before, I was actually pushing on the app window. Okay, I was pushing the app window reference onto the array. I could have pushed on the content window, the actual DOM window on, but I didn't. So I have to reference it via content window now. And I'm just going to say post message. And I'm just going to pass in the message. And then the second part is about the origin. So you can check that one if you've not come across that one before. So I'm posting the message through to each of the windows in turn. So the last thing that needs to actually happen is, back in my index.js, you'll see I've got this receive message. So I've added onto this particular window, each of those three windows, I've added on an event listener for message. When we get a message in, we run this receive message callback. So that's going to take an event. And I'm going to say output, which, if you remember, is this text area over here. So I've got a text area on the page. I'm going to say output dot text content plus equals the data, and then a new line just to keep things nice and neat. So hopefully all being well, unless I've made a mistake somewhere, when we reload the application, I can say hello, and you see that left is now saying hello to left, mid, and right, and go over here and say world, and the window right's going to chime in with no, universe. Ha. So there you go. So that's the ways that you can actually have Windows communicating. As I said, it always goes via the background page. You need to treat that as the hub. So again, just a quick run through. When we send a message, we just call. In this case, we're just calling a function on the background page. But again, you could post message through if that was your preferred method of doing it. In this case, I just decided to call a function on the background page. In there, I'm actually then picking that up and finding each of the individual windows and posting a message through to them, and then when they get that message, they just simply append it to the text area. So that's kind of the way all this works. Obviously, we're covering getting hold of the background page, and that is that.
Yes, I have one question to say. The actual moderator questions, I set this up wrong. I've been disabled, so I'm actually just working on this whole process now. Yeah.
So presumably people can't ask questions right now.
People can't ask questions right now.
We'd like them.
I did try to enable it. I got rid of the deadline, so yeah, it should be there. It's not quite.
Oh, sorry about this, folks.
Yeah, sorry about this.
Not to worry.
It should be there. I mean, you guys should be able to submit questions. If not, I'm actually monitoring the actual event as well. We mainly have. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Any changes this week in Chrome apps?
There are no changes.
Yes.
Well, there are changes. There have been quite a lot of changes, but generally, so what normally happens each week is that we try and give you a breakdown of breaking changes, things that have kind of happened inside the APIs where you'll have to change your code. This week, especially around the windowing API, there is no changes of note at least. So yeah, all your apps should work. I think what we're going to do for the next couple of episodes, at least, is start demonstrating more real-world applications. We have a couple on GitHub, so we're not going to go directly into the APIs and do this kind of conversation anymore. Well, we will. We'll have conversations, and we'll have moderator questions at work.
Whoa.
Yes, I apologize about this profusely. Profusely.
Good.
But yeah, there have been no changes this week. There might be some next week. We don't quite know, but we'll let you know.
But generally, actually, if you want us to cover anything specifically alongside the apps that we're going to take a deep dive into, just let us know. You can do that in the moderator when it works.
Yes.
Or you can post to the comments on Google Plus, or you can tweet in our general direction as well.
So we do have some things coming through. Thanks. The questions are up. So Hemanath, I hope I pronounced your name right. If you have any questions, please submit them. We have also a question from Josh Libby, which I believe I answered. There is no captioning on live content. So what happens at the end of this, we'll produce it and publish it, push it live onto YouTube, where there will be some automatic transcription and transcription of the show.
Of the video.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They can translate Scouse and Burnley.
Yep.
Burnley.
In case anybody from outside the United Kingdom is watching, which I'm sure you are, I'm from an area called Burnley, which is the source of his mockery, which is good.
I wasn't mockering.
Why not?
Mockering?
Mockering.
I can't even speak. So anyway,
right. Good question.
I do actually want to ask some questions to you about patterns and practices for multi-window applications.
Okay.
So you showed basically calling the method directly in the background page.
Yes.
Would you use that over post message?
I think it depends on the application. I have no strong feelings. I think. For me personally, I'm very used to the web developer kind of methodology of decoupling, and for me, to some degree, it's a change in mindset. There's a lot of changes in mindset that are required for Chrome apps, and I think this is one of them. I sort of making my peace with the fact that I have control of these windows. I should expect them to be there because I'm in control of that. I'm not, not expecting pop-up blockers to get in the way and those kinds of things. So I'm okay with it. I don't think there's any particular problem there. It is a different model, and if you were building an application, a native application on a platform, it would be weird to not be able to just kind of hook directly in and talk to a window. So I'm okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just curious because I've seen this thing before where we've had like magic iframes, which if you look for documentation about what a magic iframe is,
no, I don't know what it is.
It's magic.
Oh!
So basically, the idea was that you want to have, one piece of logic, which like a background page inside these applications, live inside your web app. And say it was a new mail, like a mail application that you had, and you opened a brand new email. You don't want the cold start time of that new window to be like horrendously long. You want all the code to kind of be there straight away. And where you were showing that you were basically calling and passing in methods and data into a newly open window, I think it was a kind of a similar thing where you would say, "This is my background page. Push it onto this new window."
Ah, so you're smushing in. You're just like
you're kind of smushing in all the logic, basically.
Like as a sort of a primer, a starter for 10. Like go with this, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah, and that was basically designed to get rid of that kind of massive overhead of kind of downloading assets and everything, which doesn't necessarily apply here. But we now have a centralized resource for app logic, and I think that actually brings us on to a good question is from Hemanath HM from Bangalore. Is MVC dead? Should we move on?
No.
No, I think it's more relevant and applicable to these types of applications.
Absolutely. I mean, you can inject controllers into these. You could have, a central controller and then treat these as views.
Yeah. So we were talking about this the other day, where we were basically saying that the traditional model for web applications is to build like a single page application and manage the views inside that. And we're not saying that this is ever going to go away. We're saying that you have the ability to basically go outside the normal single page app and have multiple windows and like do tool palettes like on Photoshop and all those types of things. But how do you develop those applications? Well, by the fact that we have access to the window object that we've created, we were talking about whether we could do what the magic iframe did. You kind of smush HTML and JavaScript from one window into another window with logic, all the CSS, well maybe not the CSS, but basically enough of the construct to say, well, it's an empty window until you inject data into it and content and logic.
I think the thing to remember as well, like we keep saying that background page is the hub, and if you're going to do this, you would use that kind of magic iframe smushing in kind of methodology, wouldn't you? To be like, here's a new window, smush in everything I need, off you go.
Yeah, I mean, we've played around with web intents. I keep saying this. I'm known for web intents and pushing it.
Really? That's a shock to me.
Yes, I know. I do, you know. I warn you now. We'll talk about it. But yeah, the idea behind web intents was, you know, web intents inside Chrome applications, they opened up, basically, they just call it unlaunched again. So it's like launching a brand new version of the application each time you call it. But your entire application was constructed and componentized out of like defined actions. So in this case, I mean, this is not a great example for web intents. It's not a great example. No, it's a good example. I'm joking.
I am mortally offended.
The general idea was that you might have like an edit function, a view function, and like different components inside your application with different views. And you'd want third parties to be able to kind of edit an image or view an image using your application. But what about yourself, right? Do you want to be able to have to manage all that in a completely different way than a web intents kind of client would? And so we played around with the idea of saying, well, every single action inside your application is just an intent. So you basically say, I'm going to fire a brand new window. Well, I'm going to fire the intent, find me an application. I know the application is myself, so I just call my unlaunched event and pass the data in, and then the system goes, well, I know I need to make a brand new window.
Right.
Open it up and push the data in.
In that sense, so you're saying if I had an application that could edit an image, well, it doesn't matter whether internally I say dispatch the web intent to edit an image, or somebody else says dispatch dispatch the web intent to edit an image. It's all kind of handled the same way. It kind of standardizes and homogenizes that interface to your application, doesn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, and you use the same logic that an external party would use as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice. It didn't work.
And it will, right?
Yeah, it will. There was a bug where you couldn't fire an intent on your own application, which I hope will be fixed. At least it should be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will go and crack some whips.
Yeah. Well, that'll be fine.
That'll work on it.
Yeah, it's never going to be a problem.
But yeah, we were talking about this with Angular as well.
Yes.
We haven't quite worked it out just yet, but we were talking about having your entire application user interface defined in one HTML file, and then certain directives. And there's directives, for instance, in Angular, which say make this like area a modal dialog. You basically call it, makes a modal dialog inside your page. Well, if we can inject content into web pages, why can't we inject that kind of modal dialog? It's not necessarily modal dialog. We haven't got modal dialogs in this. It doesn't directly inject them in. It just basically says, well, I'm going to inject the HTML, JavaScript, and content, my controller, my view, and all that type of stuff in, and you've got it coming out, and you've just got one kind of HTML resource as the window. And we're open to experimentation, right?
This is I was going to say this. I'm glad you kind of said this. We're keen to get feedback. You know, the question is, I mean, coming back round, is MVC dead? Should we move on? No, it's not dead. Should we move on? No. You know, go with the methodologies that you're comfortable with. We're keen to see how you get on, and so just let us know. That's really the general gist. But no, don't consider it dead.
Yes.
Next question then. What else?
So the next question: does multiple window message passing require the beta version of Chrome, or will it work with the current stable version? That's from Chris from Philadelphia. So this is very much in the dev channel at the moment. The Chrome apps kind of system, which are kind of well, the aim is to make these applications look and feel native on the desktop, right? They're not quite ready for stable channel just yet. The APIs are still evolving, so they're very much behind the Canary branch and dev. At some point soon, they should roll out into beta, and once they roll out into beta, they go into stable. The interesting thing just generally is that, sorry, I just seen a web intents question. Sorry, I should not look at other screens. So the thing is, they're not there just yet. They will come soon.
Okay.
And then this will be available to those types of applications.
Awesome.
So it's pretty cool.
What was that web intents question then? Chrome extensions and web intents, best mates or oil and water?
Best mates.
Oh, there's a shock.
Yes.
Colour me surprised. Why are they best mates?
Because the whole of Chrome is a best mate with web intents.
I like it.
So when you look at a lot of things to do with web intents, can we just try actually? This is going to be, if we go back to the screen.
Yeah. Where are we going? What are we doing?
Right. Can we go to a site, your blog? Can we go to your blog? aerotwist.com. Oh, interesting.
Excellent. Hey,
cool.
look at that. I'm joining Google.
You've joined. When are you joining Google?
I already did.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
look at these, some tutorials.
Sweet. So click on the little plus button.
Hey.
Share this page.
I would love to.
This fires an intent. So we don't have any of these installed, right? So what happens here, right, is there's actually 3 or 4 different applications. None of them are installed. Share to. Is this, what type of email is this? Is this a
nope.
personal email address system?
This is a completely fresh.
Okay, we'll give it a go, right? I'll tell you what. Let's share the Gmail. See what happens. We won't actually see any data come through, but add it and come through. So what's happened here is that we've redirected, can we jump back from the code now and then just go to our pretty face? So what's actually happened here is that we've actually passed the data from the share intent straight through to an application. It can be a Chrome application, old packaged app, new packaged app, hosted website. So it could be, say, cloudfilepicker.com.
Can it be an extension?
And an extension. So this is not Gmail directly supporting intents right now. This is me writing an extension which uses intents.
So passes through, kind of.
Yeah, basically. So all of the intent system is built off the back of Chrome. And regardless of whether it's an extension, a hosted normal web application or a website, or an application, they will all work together.
Wow. Best mates, indeed.
Best buddies, definitely not oil and water.
No.
Okay, so next question. How do I manage supporting users? We might as well answer this question. We're not going to have a good answer, I don't think. How do I manage supporting users on older Chrome versions, e.g. 15 on Ubuntu? I can see breaking changes around version 18, but the docs pre-18 are no longer available. My specific problem is around send message and send request. I think the best thing to do is send that to the Chrome extensions group or the Chrome apps group.
Yeah.
On Google Groups of all places, or ask on Stack Overflow because we monitor Stack Overflow as well. The actual documentations, we try to keep the documentation in line with what is mostly in production. So stable is where I presume like 99.9% of all our users are. I don't know the exact figures there, but it's like the majority of everyone's on stable, which at the moment is on 22. Beta, I believe, is still 22 as well, might change to 23 at some point. Dev is 23 going on 24. Those types of things. So we tend to only keep documentations for what is really, really applicable. And because we're an auto-updating framework, the number of users outside is pretty small. But that being said, we want to make sure that you can have your questions answered. I would either do it on Stack Overflow, tag it with either Google Chrome or Chrome App, I think is the
Google
tag.
Chrome apps, maybe.
Google Chrome App, is it?
I think so.
Or Chrome extensions.
Ooh.
Google Chrome extensions, I believe it'll be. Yeah, tag them up there and away you will go. And someone will try and answer your question as best as possible.
Okay. So
do we have any more questions?
We do. So sorry if this is out of topic, says Luciano. What are the deploy options for Chrome apps? If I'm using Google Apps for Business, can I deploy only on my organization?
This is a good question. So we have good support for apps organizations. If you go to the developer dashboard, chrome.google.com/webstore/developer/dashboard, that's where basically you manage your applications. And if you're inside a Google Apps domain, I believe it very much depends on the policy that your admins have set.
Absolutely, it does, yes.
So you can either publish locally to your own kind of /a/your domain kind of web store, which will have the rest of the web store in if the administrator has technically enabled it. But it'll have just your applications and only your users will be able to see them. That being said, if you make an application and you want to host it publish it using your own kind of Google Apps domain, you can still do that and you can still publish it publicly as well.
Awesome.
So yeah, that should work. And the thing right now is we don't have the ability to support these new Chrome apps just yet.
Okay.
I hope it's soon, and we'll let you know as soon as that happens.
Yes.
Because it'll be a joyous day.
But do start playing with it because when that does happen, you can have your apps ready to fly, and that's a lot of users that get to play with your shiny new app.
Yes. So I'm apologizing for kind of looking away from the camera. Got
any more
with
questions?
this practice, so Terry Davis, with this practice, can you code a floating YouTube video that can have an adjusted transparency?
So the floating window thing. Yes, we can do. Because
transparency, no.
The transparency.
There is actually an open bug about this.
Yes.
We would like to be able to have the ability for you to say, well, different parts of your Chrome are transparent. We can have the ability to do a lot with the kind of the Chrome in your Chrome application right now, but not transparency. But
the floating window thing, you can, for example, set when you create that window. If you remember back to my code, I had the create window going on. In the object that you pass through, where I had the width and the left, you can actually add frame as an extra property and then set none, and that will get rid of the bar at the top and all the rest of it. So it actually is just a window. So you could then drop in, you know, some YouTube goodness into there. So you could do that. And then, as Paul said, we've got a bug open for transparency.
Yep.
Cool.
I think we're at the end of our general questions. I do actually want to talk one more time about the windows and the window and APIs. We are definitely open for consideration of kind of how you want to build applications with the window and API. We do have some examples on GitHub, and we'll share them out later on. I'm just cleaning some of them up a little bit, but both Sencha and Kendo made 2 applications. One is a video streamer that connects to your media center on your local network. It's pretty cool.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it does UPnP broadcast, all that type of stuff.
Sweet.
It's nice. That they actually built their own method for routing messages between them. So there's like some pub sub frameworks you can get in JavaScript. I think it's JPub sub, I think, of all names. And basically, the idea behind that was to have this background page orchestrate all the logic, and especially when you're in the Sandbox. We didn't really touch that today, was the Sandbox.
No.
If your application is in Sandbox, I don't believe you can actually get access to the background page.
No.
You have to post message.
Post message.
Yeah. So if you need to use eval and a new function, and you have to have the Sandbox attribute for your application, you will be, I think, you have to use.
Kind of worth saying actually that does apply if you're using, say, a templating engine. Most of the time they use eval or new function to get those to work seamlessly. Then you do put them into a Sandbox, so you would use that, as Paul said, the post message thing. I think the only framework I'm aware of is Angular right now that it doesn't need out of the box.
The Backbone, you can use Backbone to some extent.
Okay,
there is the only thing is the render method on the template, which you can work around quite easily.
Okay.
But generally, Backbone works perfectly. Kendo, I believe, Sencha, they use the Sandbox system.
Okay.
So they use, but it's kind of cool because it abstracts your kind of view and your logic away quite nicely inside the background page. It's pretty cool.
Also, what we didn't cover today, I believe we covered in previous week, was the minimize and maximize. You've got also other methods that you can call on the Windows, which, as I say, we didn't cover today, but you can find the documentation on developers.chrome.com /apps. And that covers things like, minimize, maximize, and
you know what is interesting I found the other day, scanning the docs?
Shoot.
If you put trunk before apps, you get the very latest documentation. And TCP Listener looks like it is in the latest version.
Oh.
So we have, this is
servers in the browser.
Yes. Oh. So we have the ability to do UDP servers in the browser because we have bind. Which is pretty cool.
It is amazing.
The biggest one people want, though, is the ability to do a TCP server in the background. So you could basically run a HTTP server inside your application.
Hang on, the web serving the web.
Indeed.
Oh.
It's like,
wow.
It's pretty cool. But that's actually pretty cool because we get the ability to do nice things. I haven't tested it to see if it works. I'm presuming though the documentation's there, then there's a good chance that at least the API, well, I'll rephrase it, the documentation is generated off the API information. So at least means the stubs are there. Whether the actual implementation is there is a different thing. But yeah, we have this ability to do some really potentially awesome stuff around networking. Eric Beidelman, so we ran a hackathon internally.
Certainly did.
Eric Beidelman was trying to do something similar, but we couldn't do it. Basically, he was saying, I want to be able to develop on my Chromebook. So, my Chromebook. We always get questions about Chromebooks. He wants to be able to develop on his Chromebook, but also host and test his application.
Absolutely.
So the idea is basically, it's like, I don't want to have to go out, FTP it up somewhere and test it that way. I just want to be able to run a basic web server to test my content and view it inside a browser.
And so TCP Listen is exactly what you need for that, isn't
it?
Yeah,
that's the aim, is TCP Listen is that exact thing. That's the first use case that I can think of.
Yeah, it's a good one and all.
I think it's pretty cool.
All right.
I can imagine SMTP servers in the browser.
There's a whole world there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, we would actually like to know what type of things that you want to hear from us in the future.
Yes.
Will I be on my own next time?
I don't know. We'll find out, won't we?
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Tune in. Oh, to find out.
But ideally, we want to try and get more kind of very specific application information. So show you applications running rather than just show some of the raw APIs. We'll deep dive into those APIs, but we'll kind of give you a good overview of what's going to happen. I really want to talk about the browser tag. That's one of those things that's going to be kind of pretty cool.
Yeah, especially how that differs from like an iframe. You know, what are the because that has come up before. How does this differ?
Yeah.
So we can cover off that as well.
We'll cover off that. We'll do a whole load of stuff around storage.
Yeah.
You're kind of doing some playing around with that. Image downloading at one point.
Absolutely.
Yes, I know Eric Badelman covered it, but hopefully we'll get a library out at some point.
Soon. Very soon.
But yes, sorry.
Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a little bit short today. I'm very sorry about the questions and answers. Just purely because so what it was, I didn't set it up correctly, completely. I set the questions to end as we started, not end as we finished.
This is quite cathartic for you, isn't it? To just just share this out to the internet.
Yes.
Dear internet, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
There you go, you see? Feel better?
Yes,
Feel
and
good?
also, we have another question. Can we continue? I think we can.
Well, we haven't said goodbye.
We haven't said goodbye.
This is the joy of the liveness.
So, if you're into British comedy, we have a surprise for you later.
No, don't do that. Yeah, we did it. All right.
We did it.
All right.
It's put the pressure on.
Yeah, no, I like it, and we'll forget.
Cool. So it's Hey Month. I think that's how we pronounced it. I got from, I think, Bangalore again.
What was that about? Magic iframes?
Magic iframes. Saw a proposal to remove it. Yes, I heard about a proposal to remove the magic iframes work as well. The reason why, well, I say the reason why, I don't know the full reason why. I wouldn't be surprised because no one really knew how it ever worked. I never saw any documentation.
Right.
You search Google for magic iframes, you get a page mentioning magic iframes and not exactly what it was. But that was the idea, is that you could start to inject content and bridge an iframe between two windows. So you go open a window, window.open, well, the window reference off window.open, you basically put the iframe in. But no one ever knew how to do it.
Huh.
But if you ever saw any examples live, share them out and I'll share them on Google Plus and Twitter. I'm Paul Kinlan on Google Plus.
I'm Paul Lewis on Google Plus.
But you got a funny name on Twitter, right?
Aerotwist.
Aerotwist.
Yeah.
Why is that?
That's just because they're apparently, and this was a shock to me, but there are other Paul Lewises. So, and some of them are like famous pianist, a journalist. So that left me no choice. I had to come up with another name. So there you go, Aerotwist it is.
It's a pretty cool name.
It's all right, isn't it?
It's pretty cool.
It sort of works.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking like Kinland's not a very popular name.
No.
So
what are you going to do? Roll with it, I think, is what you're going to do.
Yes. There was an actor called Jim Kinlan. But that's not really the same.
Oh, this is thrilling and on topic.
Yes.
So, with that said,
it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Yes.